because people, communication also has a lot of history behind it. It dates back to a long time ago, from the writings on the walls of cave, papyrus to paper, rise of newspaper, and more. These are all the history and important events that contributed to what communication is today. Studying about the history of something is very important to trace its root and origin. The history of communication helps us to learn about the past events that are relevant and contributed to the development of communication. So let's get started. Long ago, around AD 100, Christians invented the Codex. The Codex was the historical ancestor of the modern book. Instead of being composed of sheets of paper, it used sheets of vellum, papyrus, or other materials. Here, the papyrus pages, facing one another, were bound together instead of rolled up for easy reading. A revolution in printing took place in the 15th century. This is important because any attempt to tackle the history of modern media should always begin with a printed book. Johannes Gutenberg is famous for having designed and built the first printing press to incorporate movable type and mechanized inking, and for using his invention to produce the Gutenberg Bible. The Gutenberg printing process launched what could be considered the first medium truly designed for the masses. Johannes Gutenberg's printing press made it possible to manufacture large number of books for relatively little cost for the first time. Books and other printed matter consequently became available to a wide general audience, greatly contributing to the spread of literacy in Europe.
Because of Gutenberg printing press, the production of newspapers was possible. The newspaper was restricted by the ruling monarchs. However, the first newspapers were patronized by the merchants. The newspapers kept them up to date on what was going on in other regions of the world, both economically and politically. Because of England's monarchy, the newspaper was a regular feature in the country in the late 1600s. By 1700, the concept of a free press had established a powerful counter-argument to authoritarian states. Macquail cites that the newspaper is a more significant innovation than the book. It was a new literacy with social and cultural form that catered to town-based businesses and professional people, a new class emerging in Western Europe. It provided a new function for a distinct class that will give to developments in the economic sphere, specifically industrialization, and the rise of the nation-state. Thoreau notes the rise of an adversarial press, defined as a press that had the ability to conduct dialogue and even argue with the government. It was a sentiment that arose from the ranks of the intellectuals in the British and American colonies. The development of steam engine gave the rise to the steam-powered cylinder press, which dramatically lowered the cost of newspapers. As an institution, the newspaper publisher is based on an urban or semi-urban setting, enjoys relative freedom but is subject to the government's regulation, thus subjects itself to self-censorship, exists in the public domain, and is marketed as a commodity, thus expects profit generated from its sales. With the growth of the internet and digital technology, the newspaper as a medium has evolved. Online newspapers are no longer limited to daily news, but must also account for immediacy. Reading habits have shifted substantially as well. Online newspaper readers tend to read the news at all hours of the day.
For the next topic we will have is the history of static images. So now what we see are the moving images. Several inventions came together to create cinema as a mass medium. George Eastman created the film and founded the Kodak Corporation. When the strip was produced and examined with the naked eye, it appeared to be moving. Later then, Louis and Auguste Lumière, two Frenchmen, advanced the technology of film projectors. With huge screen projecting, Edison would continue to improve on the Lumière brothers' technique. The rise of film addressed a growing worldview that would characterize much of modernity's ascent, delineation of people's lives between labor and leisure, while the newspaper responded to people's thirst for information. Radio and television followed very closely. The term television was first used in a publication called Scientific American in 1907. By 1930, the Radio Corporation of America had created electrical scanning, which was a vast improvement over the mechanical scanning that had previously been used. An engineer named James Lindenberg began manufacturing transmitters in Bolinao, Pangasinan in 1946. He is called the father of Philippine television for founding the Bolinao Electronics Corporation.
When we say the rise of new media, we therefore start to have a clear idea on what it really is. New media, as time goes on and passes by, things started to change. As time goes on, things change and things evolve, just like the rise of new media. When we say old media, it is therefore the media that is in existence even before the arrival of the internet. That is a traditional media that was known during the times before. But however, in the year 1950s, the landscape of media and information of technologies, things started to change, and now we are going to look into the rise of new media, on how media started to rise and has basically evolved all throughout the years. We are now going to witness the changes in each of the timeline of the rise of new media. In the year 1948, the invention of the transistor radio signaled the development of the semiconductor devices, considered the foundation of the modern electronics. So as we can see here, we can witness the changes that is happening. In that year, things started to develop and change. In the year 1953, the IBM has shipped its first electronic computer called the 701. By the year 1969, the ARPANET was created and considered as the predecessor of the Internet. On the year 1971, the transition from ARPANET to Internet commenced to serve more purposes other than catering to the military. By the year 1983, it was adopted. Commands for electronic means were standard lights. As the internet reach has grown, content can now be accessed and consumed in a variety of formats, making it easier and faster to do so.
Timeline of the Internet in the Philippines. Internet in the Philippines first became available on March 29, 1994. The early history of the Internet in the Philippines started with the establishment of bulletin board systems by computer hobbyists and enthusiasts. They were able to link their BBSs using a dial-up connection protocol, enabling them to participate in discussion forums, send messages, and share files. It started as early as 1986. In 1987, the Philippine FidoNet Exchange, a local network for communication between several BBSs in Metro Manila, was formed. By the early 90s, email, gateways, and services broadened, courtesy of some multinational corporations operating in the Philippines. By 1993, the government would figure as a major player, mostly of the role discharged by the DOST and support from the IRF. The PhilNet project was born. The PhilNet project was launched, consisting of representatives from various universities. It would eventually play a significant role in connecting the Philippines to the global internet. By July 1993, with full funding from the DOST, the PhilNet project scaled up. By November 1993, an additional grant of 12.5 million pesos would follow to the purchase of equipment and lease of communication lines. By March 29, 1994, the Philippines was formally connected to the internet using the PLDT network center in Makati City. On the same day, the PhilNet connected successful link-up with the global internet happened. It was a historic moment.